On today's show, the Houston Rockets get the ugly revenge W against the San Antonio Spurs, 93-82, a game straight out of the early 2000s. Why was the offense so rough in this game for the Rockets? Tari Eason, his flu game appearance, dominating in that fourth quarter to lead the Rockets to the win. And then Thompson makes his return to the lineup, and so much more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
Throw it up to Jalen Green.
Sengun here in the short row. Oh, Mike, that's the no-look.
Jabari for three and the win. Yeah!
Look at Tari Eason.
Here comes Tari.
No!
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
The Houston Rockets select Ime Thompson and Cam Whitmore.
One thing I have never done is not made the playoffs, and so we want to take that step here as well.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day. Thank you for being an everydayer, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for making the show part of your day every single day. A lot to talk about from this Rockets 93-82 win against the San Antonio Spurs. Probably, not even probably, this was the ugliest game of the season. This is the ugliest game in recent memory that I've seen played between two professional basketball teams. This was, I don't know, man. Like, it looked like both of these teams were playing on some kind of like championship hangover. Like, it looked like these were the two teams that competed in the final game of the NBA Cup on Saturday night, not the Lakers and Pacers. And it looked like they were still kind of hungover from that game, or from, celebrating in the streets of Vegas after the win or after a loss. I don't know. It was such an ugly game. This is one where you throw it away, you burn the tape, and we're going to talk about the game in this episode, and then I never want to have to talk about this game ever again because there was so much to dislike about this game. But it was an ugly game. However, the Rockets still managed to get the win, and that's what's important here is they found a way to get an ugly win against the San Antonio Spurs. I thought that they had, they were going to come in and kind of play with a bit of a chip on their shoulder and dominate the Spurs based on how good they've been at home. And they weren't really able to do that. And a big factor for why the Rockets struggled so much in this game, like it or not, was the Victor Wembanyama factor. Wemby had 5 blocks, all 5 of his blocks, in the first half of this game. And his presence really bothered the Rockets there in the first half specifically. I mean, he was limiting guys. Guys were afraid to even drive it anywhere near the rim, and there were times when they did drive and just got flat out rejected because they were taking ill-advised shots in and around the basket because and Ime talked about this postgame, he didn't like the way that they tried to attack Wembanyama, right? You can't attack him straight up because he's a shot blocker. He's going to swat it to the 5th row, or he's just going to palm the ball and take it the other way. So the Rockets really, I think, let Wemby, let his size, let his presence kind of dictate what they wanted to do offensively there in the first half after a few early blocks, some difficulties in and around the rim, as well as the other side was they were just missing some point blank shots. Like, yes, Wemby played a factor, and maybe that like little, I don't know, that that feeling in the back of your head where you're like trying to rush a layup or a quick, shot put or something around the rim because you know that Wemby is lurking somewhere. The Wemby effect is very real, unfortunately, and the Rockets dealt with that throughout the early going of this game. It was a 21-19 first quarter. Again, a really low scoring affair in the first quarter. Things kind of picked up there a little bit in the second quarter. Rockets started to get some things going offensively, courtesy of Uncle Jeff and the second unit, who we'll talk about it a little bit more later on with Ime Thompson making his return. But that second unit lineup of Aaron Holiday, Ime Thompson, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., and Jeff Green. So basically one starter with Jabari and then four bench guys actually looked really good. It was maybe one of the most cohesive secondary units that we've seen the Rockets put on the floor this entire season, where they all played really well off of one another. And a big part of that, shout out to Uncle Jeff, who was able to manufacture some points at the free throw line by just straight up attacking Victor Wembanyama. At one point, he went barreling through Victor's chest for an and one opportunity that the Spurs tried to challenge and were unsuccessful in doing so, because you don't play defense with your face, Victor. And that's exactly what happened. Jeff Green went straight up through his chest, through his jaw, basically, and finished right at the rim. So Jeff Green finishing the game with 12 points, a couple rebounds and assists, but he was 2 of 4 from the floor and 7 of 7 at the free throw line. So Jeff Green kind of helping carry the scoring load a little bit there in the first half, when the Rockets were unable to hit really anything at all. And again, doing so with that second unit, the 5-out spacing, all of that. I really, liked the calmness that he kind of brought to that group. I want to focus a little bit more on that group a little bit later on as well. But I think that as things, went on in this game, I didn't think anything could be as ugly as the first quarter was in this game. And then the third quarter happened, an 18-15 third quarter. I mean, look, these two teams were awful when it came to shooting the basketball. You look at the Rockets, they came alive there late in the game. Credit to Tari Eason in the fourth quarter. He is your Locked On Rockets player of the game. I want to talk about his performance. Playing through sickness, playing through injury, just doing what Tari does. Going to talk about him coming up here in just a moment. But the shooting percentages were so whack across the board in this game. The Rockets shot 34.5% from the floor. The Spurs shot a little bit better than that, 35.5%, but they shot just 12% from three-point land, 5 of 41 for the Spurs from long distance. And even though the Rockets struggled offensively in this game, this was one of those games where you look at it and they were able to hang their hat on their defense, right? So at no point did you look up and, Keldon Johnson wasn't torching the Rockets, Devin Vassell, Malachi Branham. It didn't matter who it was for the Spurs. The Rockets did a really good job of containing every single player on the Spurs roster. You look up and down the roster. Jeremy Sohan, 3 of 11 from the floor. Keldon Johnson, 3 of 14. Wemby was the most efficient player in the starting lineup, and he really wasn't all that efficient. 7 of 15 from the floor. Devin Vassell, 5 of 16, 1 of 9 from three-point land. And then Malachi Branham, 6 of 13 from the floor. So the Rockets did a phenomenal job defensively in this game, despite the fact that they couldn't throw a rock into the ocean for the better part of, 3.5 quarters, until Tari Eason kind of took over in that fourth and final frame. And this is kind of the Rockets' identity, right? Is they've gone through these lulls offensively, and they go through droughts where they really can't even seem to manufacture some offense, but they were able to hang into the game long enough, and they were able to kind of settle themselves down in that fourth quarter, specifically more so in the second half, going back to some of their consistent ways of generating offense in Alperen Sengun, who had a much better, he was awful in the first half, had a much better second half, and then just finding ways to eke out a W. And that's kind of the identity of this team. So the fact that they can, when things have it going, and Ime said this postgame, when they've got it going, when the shots are falling, they can win and they can blow out teams by 20, 25 points because they're a dominant defensive team. And when the offense is there, they look unbeatable. But then when the offense disappears, which it does, unfortunately, sometimes for this team, they can still rely on their defense and they can still walk away with an 11-point dub against a team like the San Antonio Spurs, which is encouraging. So coming up, want to talk about Tari Eason's flu game, his impact, and what a difference maker he made in this second meetup against the San Antonio Spurs, why he was so sorely missed in that first meeting between these two teams, as well as Ime Thompson making his return debut after his injury rehabilitation, how he looked, some of the things that his return impacted as far as lineups, rotations, on the court presence, and a couple other notes from this one. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next big event you're attending, right? You're trying to go out and have a good time. You don't want to be stressed about how you're going to get the tickets and then what the experience is going to be like when you get to the venue, where your seats are going to be, all that stuff that you have to worry about, right? Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events happening near you. They've got last-minute tickets, flash deals, all kinds of deals that you want to take advantage of through the app. It's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. You've got views from your seat, so you know exactly what to expect when you get to the venue. They've got their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and so much more. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. They've got all-in prices, and they show you your total up front, so you don't get surprised by all those like add-on fees at the end, right, where suddenly you've got your ticket price and then it like doubles when you go to checkout because of all the hidden fees and stuff that other ticketing dealers like to try to throw at you last second. They are obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets with so many different deals to take advantage of. You've got to go check them out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, Tari Eason here in this game. He is your Locked On Rockets player of the game, and for good reason. He was the one Houston Rocket that actually managed to put some points on the board and do so in an efficient fashion. So Tari Eason finishing this one, 18 points on 8 of 16 shooting. He was 2 of 5 from downtown. Missed his only free throw attempt, but he had 14 rebounds, had an assist, had a couple steals, only a couple turnovers. He was a plus 12 in his 27 minutes off the Rockets bench, and he closed this game. Tari Eason played the entirety of the fourth quarter, and for good reason. Ime Udoka stuck with him. He was a complete difference maker in this game on both ends of the basketball court. So let's start with the biggest impact that Tari Eason has usually on a game, his defense and his rebounding. And this was one of those games where it was ugly, it was chaotic, it was messy, and these are the exact types of games that Tari Eason thrives in, right? When you have the energy level and the motor that Tari does, when you have a game where there's 50-50 balls and there's hustle plays that need to be made and you have to scrap and claw and fight for a win, those are the types of games that Tari Eason can absolutely shine in. Now, not to say he doesn't shine in regular games as well. He does. He's a guy that just makes things happen when he's on the basketball court. But in this game specifically, it really felt like his energy was infectious on the defensive end. When he was on the floor, things just happened, right? Whether it was deflections, whether it was finishing possession strong, whether it was second opportunities offensively, despite how bad the Rockets were offensively in this game, getting those second and even sometimes third chances offensively is what kind of made a bit of a difference, right? Where maybe, okay, he missed the first shot, offensive rebound. Okay, he missed the second shot. Okay, offensive rebound. Okay, then finally he got one to go on the third pass through, right? But just loved what we saw from Tari in this game. And for him to have played through sickness, through injury, Tari dealt with, basically having like these flu-like symptoms, right? He talked about it post-game, having like the cough and the phlegm and everything that he was dealing with. So all of that kind of came back a couple days ago. And then he was also dealing with the left leg soreness as well, which had him questionable before the game even started. So for him to come out there and play, he kind of laughed it off when I said, "Are we putting this one up there with MJ's flu game?" He's like, "No, this is my flu game. We're not going to put it up there with MJ's." I don't know. For him to play under the weather and be the Rockets' best player on the floor in this one, he really truly is a difference maker when he's out there on the floor. And you see that, the Rockets have a lot of lineup versatility that they can go to the point where, the lineup that they decided to close this game with was essentially the starters minus Jalen plus Tari. And that's something that you can absolutely get away with because Dillon Brooks isn't, a small forward in the sense that he can't play down a position. In fact, he played a lot of guard at times when he was with the Memphis Grizzlies. So you just get like this jumbo-sized all defensive lineup when you run Fred VanVleet, Dillon Brooks, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., and even Alperen Sengun, who's a much improved defender this year. That lineup to close out the game really calmed things down for the Rockets. It's how they were able to pull this one out. It's how they were able to kind of squeeze ahead and get ahead by 11 to close out this game there at the end. So for me, Tari's definitely a difference maker. Not having him in the early part of the season really hurt this Rockets team in some of those close games that they had. Again, I think that if you had Tari out there against the Spurs or even against the Warriors in the early going of this season, then those two games would have probably been wins instead of losses. And we're starting to see, right, keep in mind, Tari's still kind of ramping up, right? He's only been around for a handful of games so far. I think he's still played, less than like 10 games this season? I want to confirm that before I spin the numbers wrong. Yeah, so 9 games played this season. So Tari hasn't even broken 10 games yet this season. Once Tari, so he's probably, finally settling in, getting acclimated to what's going on. But Tari is a big part of what this Rockets team wants to achieve, and you're seeing how he kind of fits the mold for an Ime Udoka style player. His ability both offensively, defensively. There were some maybe, a few questionable shot attempts from Tari in this game, right, where he's got the ability to secure a rebound and go coast to coast with it, and he's shown an increased desire to do so when at times maybe the right play is to make a kick ahead pass and get it to a guard to kind of run the offense. There was one play where he drove it coast to coast and then put up an ill-advised turnaround midi or something. So some of those plays we could probably live without, but by and large the good far outweighs the bad with Tari Eason. So for him to show up in the fourth quarter the way that he did, making his presence felt not only defensively, not only on the glass, but hitting some very timely buckets in this game. 14 of his 18 points scored there in the fourth quarter. He sent the San Antonio Spurs packing. He brought the W home for this Rockets team, which is why he is your Locked On Rockets player of the game. But I also want to give a little bit of credit as far as the rebounding department goes. The Rockets dominated the glass in this game, 60-51. Victor Wembanyama individually did have 18 boards, but a guy that has really hurt the Rockets in the past situationally, Zach Collins, in his 14 minutes off the bench, was largely a non-factor on the glass. The Rockets did a really good job of being physical with him, bodying up to him. He's a guy that's caused them some issues in the past. A lot of Wemby's boards that he got were simply just, first off, 16 of his 18 were defensive rebounds. So, it is what it is. You close out the Rockets missed so many damn shots in this game. Of course, you're going to have a mountain of boards for Wemby to pick up. But it didn't really feel like he was necessarily hurting them on the boards. And that's the important part. And the Rockets still managed to walk away with 15 offensive rebounds in this game, despite the fact that Wemby was out there, despite the fact that he played 33 minutes. He was dealing with some foul trouble here and there. The Rockets made it a point to try and attack him, which goes into here. The next guy that I want to talk about to close out this segment is Alperen Sengun, who, credit to Ime Udoka again for being creative in how he deploys Sengun defensively. So Jabari Smith Jr. drew the task of guarding Victor Wembanyama straight up a lot of this game because they parked Alperen Sengun on Jeremy Sohan. Just like they did the same defensive scheme that they used against the OKC Thunder, they used it again against the Spurs. When you've got a non-shooting threat in the lineup, it seems that Ime Udoka is perfectly comfortable with parking Alperen Sengun on Jeremy Sohan. And I think over the entire course of the game, there was only one possession where Sohan backed out the ball, ISO'd on Alperen Sengun, and drove in and got an easy layup. Aside from that, it led to some really clunky offense for them. Alpi was able to kind of free roam and pack the paint. That helped with the rebounding battle. Alpi was able to get back inside and secure some rebounds to close out defensive possession strong. But for Alpi, this was a game where, again, Wemby definitely impacted the flow of this game offensively for the Rockets, especially there in the first half. But so Alpi was 2 of 8 shooting in the first half. Ime Udoka said that he specifically talked to Alpi at halftime, saying that he was going to draw up some plays for him, that they knew that Victor was in foul trouble. They wanted to attack him specifically. And so he also mentioned that, Alpi is a calming force for them offensively. He's a consistent offensive engine for them, and he is kind of their go-to guy late in games, right? And Ime said this, where they can go to him and they know that they're going to get a high-quality shot from him out of the post, whether it's him taking the shot or whether it's him collapsing the defense and generating a shot for one of his teammates. They trust his ability to get them good looks late in games. And to have a game where Alperen Sengun flat out struggled in the first half, only 2 of 8 shooting. He looked a little shook at times, trying, or maybe just, missing some point blank shots even. It was not a good half for Alperen Sengun. In fact, Alpi and Jalen Green both got benched to close the first half because they both had defensive miscues within the final 2 minutes of that second quarter that allowed the Spurs to kind of get back into it a little bit. And Ime pulled both of them out of the game because of it. And for Ime to still trust Alperen Sengun to close out this game and to utilize him as their go-to guy late to get high-quality shots means a lot, right? That's a lot of confidence that Ime Udoka has in Alperen Sengun that hasn't really been there historically for Alpi through his first couple of years with this organization, right? Where previously it would be you'd have Steven Silas sometimes even throwing shade Alperen Sengun's way, when he didn't really deserve it. Whereas now you've got Ime Udoka who goes out of his way to give Alperen Sengun praise and to highlight the good that he does, even when it's not a question directly about Alperen Sengun. So having that level of confidence and trust from your head coach means a lot. And guess how Alpi responded? He had the talk with Ime Udoka at halftime. Second half, 4-4 shooting from the floor. Perfect game from the floor. Second half, he had a couple buckets in the third quarter, had a couple buckets to close the game out, had an assist there in the fourth quarter. Things looked good. He was able to calm down the Rockets' offense at times. And again, that's a byproduct of the coaching staff trusting what Alpi can do, right? They're not running with him on a short leash. They know that even if he starts a game rough, that he will find himself over the course of a game. We've seen that time and time again from Alpi, where maybe he struggles there in the first half or even the first 3 quarters, but he shows up most when it counts. And that's one of the qualities of a star player, right? Is you might struggle for parts of the game and you might, miss some point blank shots. You might be having an off night offensively, but he's still putting forth the requisite effort on the defensive end. He's still rebounding at a high level, and he was still able to come back and close out this game in a strong way, in an efficient way on the offensive side of things as well. So coming up, I want to talk about Amen Thompson, his return to the Houston Rockets lineup, what that means for a couple other players in the Rockets lineup, some early observations for how the Rockets deployed him, the players that they used around him, and what it means for the team going forward. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the offers stay hot on FanDuel because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins, and all you have to do is wager $5. It's that easy. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. Right now, you can take a look at the outright Super Bowl 58 betting favorites. The San Francisco 49ers running away as the favorites right now, plus 260 to win it all this season. You got the Ravens behind them at plus 600. The Chiefs at plus 650, the Philadelphia Eagles at plus 750, and rounding out the top 5, you have the Miami Dolphins at plus 800. They've also got you covered for spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to start this NFL season. Again, that's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. I want to share this clip of Alperen, this very wholesome interaction between I guess it was between Alp and Tari Eason. Got the chance to ask Alp if he had a nickname for Tari Eason, since Tari Eason is always has nicknames and things to say about Alperen Sengun, and it was just a very wholesome interaction between these two guys.
Tari has called you Big Wizard in the past because of your passing. Do you have a nickname for him?
Everyone's saying something, you know. Tari always saying something. He always have nicknames for me. I love him.
You don't have one for him?
Huh?
You don't have a nickname for Tari?
I'm telling him. Wait, I told him another day. Tari, what I told you another day? You remember? When? Close. Yes. Gloves. I told you right. Gloves, right? Yes. Yes. He liked that. Yes. Yeah. Big hands. He's like just getting the ball on away.
What is going on?
Gloves.
Gloves. Gloves. Gloves. Yeah, something like that.
Gloves. Okay.
All right. Gotcha.
You guys need to be grateful I'm talking English over here.
Oh, thanks, Alfie. Thanks.
That's the nickname. I'm not gonna lie to you, I had no idea what he was saying. Gloves, that's all right. I mess with it, you know. He's the wizard. I'm Gloves. I'll take it.
Thank you. Thanks, Tari.
Okay, so not a ringing endorsement from Tari Eason on the gloves nickname from Alperen Sengun. We were all trying to figure out what the hell Alp told us, because I thought he said claws at first, and I was like, I mean, claws kind of works, but gloves works too. And then he said the big hands. I was like, oh, that's what he meant, gloves. But credit to Alp. He's such a wholesome guy, saying that he loves Tari, that they're always saying something to him, and Tari being completely honest from across the room. I had no idea what he was saying. But it's kind of fitting, right? Tari's a Seattle kid. Gary Payton, the glove. So maybe, Tari can be the next in the lineage of defensive-minded players with a glove-related nickname. So you've got Gary Payton, the glove, and then you've got Tari Eason, gloves. So I don't know. Well, maybe we'll have to workshop that nickname a little bit, but Tari gave it his seal of approval. So you've got the big wizard and you've got gloves for the Houston Rockets. But I want to know your thoughts on Tari Eason's flu game. Let me know how you felt about his performance, especially in that fourth quarter. And I also want to know your reaction to Ime Thompson's return to the lineup for the Houston Rockets, because you look at the box score, and the one thing that really does stand out was the rebounding. Ime Thompson had 5 boards in just 10 minutes of action. And that really showcases just how effective he can be using his athleticism, using his size to help the Rockets generate, either closing out defensive possessions strong or generating some extra offensive possessions. He had a couple offensive rebounds of his 5 boards overall. Just 1 bucket, 1 of 2 shooting from the floor. He had the one. It was a very nice transition play where Jabari Smith Jr. Was leading the break in transition. After a defensive set, and was able to get the kick ahead pass to Ime Thompson, who just was a lightning quick blur in transition, took a couple dribbles and was able to then elevate. And to me, a couple of things that stood out was the way that he was using his speed. In that specific instance, in transition, Ime Thompson exploded. He was off to the races. And when he elevated expecting contact, and the way that he was able to then just glide through the air when the contact didn't happen and finish at the rim with ease was really encouraging, because had he gotten hit in the air, I feel like he was still on his way to finishing like an and one bucket. Like, he jumped ready to absorb contact and then adjusted midair and just laid the ball in gently when the contact never happened. So, and there were points in this game where he was able to get a defensive rebound and just take off to the other side of the court. And he didn't really have opportunities to, I guess, capitalize on other transition opportunities or attacking off of a strong defensive possession. In this one, he had some where he drove the ball all the way in, and then he would kind of pull it back out and reset. And I don't know what necessarily the goal was here, I guess, for Ime to not, maybe not step on anybody's toes, just kind of come back in, get some reps. He played a lot off ball in this game. There were moments where He played a lot with Aaron Holiday, with Fred VanVleet, and those guys got, ample time to kind of run the show with Amin Thompson still out there on the floor as kind of like a secondary ball handler. But he basically played as more so of a wing in this game than he did as a primary ball handler, and that's perfectly okay, right? There's going to be plenty of opportunities for him to handle the rock, and the beauty of having guys like Fred VanVleet, like Aaron Holiday, who are great catch and shoot threats off of Amin Thompson, is it gives him an outlet to actually pass to, and B, those guys, even though they're a bit smaller, both of them 6 feet tall, Amin Thompson being a massive 6'7", maybe 6'8", makes up for that, to where you don't have to worry about how things are going to be mismatched, on the defensive end or offensively, whatever, because Amin Thompson's your quote unquote point guard out there on the floor. You've got two other guys in Fred and Aaron Holiday who can kind of effectively slot in as your 2 guard offensively and let Amin Thompson still run point situationally. So there's a lot of things that you can achieve with the lineups around Amin Thompson. And Ime Udoka said before the game that he wanted specific guys out there with Amin Thompson. And we got a very good look at the specific guys that he wanted out there with Amin Thompson. And those guys are very specifically Aaron Holiday, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, Jeff Green. And to a lesser degree, I think Dillon also, I want to double check this. I believe that Dillon also played some minutes with, Tari, Fred, Jabari. Dillon played some with, did Dillon play with Amin? I don't think Dillon actually played any minutes with Amin in this one. Maybe I'm mistaken here, but basically, Ime is lining things up to where Amin is playing with 5-out spacing with guys who can shoot the basketball from the perimeter to really open things up. So what does that mean? It means that likely we're not going to see much Amin Thompson, Alperen Sengun action together. And that kind of makes sense because Fred and Alpi have a beautiful chemistry with one another. You don't necessarily need to try to force something to work between Amin Thompson and Alperen Sengun. And it's a lot harder because, again, defenses treat those two guys as non-shooters. So it kind of plugs up the offense a little bit and muck things up. So we're not going to see minutes between those two guys. And it also means that we're not going to see minutes between Amin Thompson and Jae'Sean Tate, it looks like, for the most part. So the two guys that were most heavily impacted by the return of Amin Thompson in this game, he only played 10 minutes, but the two guys who were most heavily impacted in this game, Jalen Green and Jae'Sean Tate. Now, Jalen Green's minutes were also impacted because Tari Eason wound up closing the game, playing the entirety of the fourth quarter, and Ime Udoka opted to just not go back to Jalen Green at all in the fourth quarter. But Ime Udoka also adjusted his rotations to where Jalen Green usually checks back in at the end of the first quarter and end of the third quarter and kind of runs that second unit for, the entire time that Fred VanVleet is on the bench, right? So Jalen will check back in with a minute or two to go at the end of the first or end of the third, and then he runs the second unit until Fred comes back in, with however many minutes left in the second quarter or the fourth quarter to close things out. In this game, Jalen Green did not get that opportunity. Instead, he ran the second unit for a little bit in the first quarter. And then top of the second quarter, he started the game on the bench. And Amin Thompson was out there with the second unit. Again, that lineup featuring Aaron Holiday, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., Jeff Green, the 5-out spacing lineup. And then also subsequently Jae'Sean Tate, who got got a little bit of burn with the second unit in those early basically Jae'Sean Tate kind of checking in early, substituting for Dillon Brooks in that first quarter, and then later on in that third quarter. Ime wanted to make sure that he didn't have Jae'Sean Tate out there on the floor with Amin Thompson. And that, to me, screams, hey, they know what they're doing. I mean, you can't have, let me rephrase. You can have multiple non-shooters out there on the court if they're working seamlessly with one another and moving the basketball at a high level, cutting, all that kind of stuff. It can work. It's a lot harder to make work, though. And I do think early on in the season, defenses were taking advantage of having multiple non-shooters on the floor for the Rockets with guys like Amin Thompson and Jae'Sean Tate sharing time on the court, or one of those guys sharing time with Alperen Sengun. And it just kind of made things even harder for this team offensively. So the takeaway here is, you've got to find minutes for Amin Thompson somehow. And it very clearly looks like the two guys whose minutes are going to be hit the most for Amin Thompson, at least right out of the gate, are going to be Jalen Green and Jae'Sean Tate. Because it looks like Jalen Green has maybe, I don't want to say lost the role that he had in guiding and leading that second unit, but if Amin Thompson's going to get, something like 10 to 12 minutes a night, just as Ime Udoka is easing him back into the rotation and finding the right spots for him, those minutes are largely going to come at the top of the second quarter and top of the fourth quarter, where you can run Amin Thompson with the backups and give him that 5-out spacing that he needs to really be effective. And what that also does for the Rockets, something that I've been begging for, is it allows Jabari Smith Jr. the opportunity to be in that second unit and ideally maybe be a focal point for them to go to in the post occasionally. We didn't see it much in this game, if at all, in this game. However, I will highlight Jabari Smith Jr. was a team high 5 assists in this game, tying Fred VanVleet. They were both a team high 5 assists in this one, but Jabari doing a really good job moving the basketball, right? There's something there. His ability to put the ball on the floor and, generate looks for himself and even at times pass and generate looks for his teammates. I don't think Jabari's ever going to be like a tier 1 engine type player like Alperen Sengun, where you run the offense through that guy and generate a bunch of good looks, but I do think there's something there, and I hope it's something that the Rockets explore with that second lineup, with that new kind of secondary unit that they've got featuring now Amin Thompson. So there were questions about how it was going to look when he returned, whose minutes he was going to take, and right now it looks like the minutes that he's most impacting are going to be the minutes for Jae'Sean Tate and Jalen Green moving forward. So, Ed, I will say on that note, it was the right call for Ime Udoka to close this game with Tari Eason instead of Jalen Green. Jalen was kind of a non-factor in this game. 7 points, 2 of 10 shooting, 1 of 4 from long distance. I don't know if he made a shot in the second half. I want to double check that stat. He had that one layup, I believe, in the third quarter. Oh, nope, never mind. It was it must have been before halftime. He had one driving layup on Victor Wembanyama that I thought was really strong, where he drove into the rim, absorbed contact, finished over Wemby, and then he hit a 3-pointer somewhere, I think, tail into the first quarter. And those were his only 2 buckets. Missed everything else, and at times, again, he was getting burned defensively for a couple possessions in a row on the defensive side of things, had a turnover. And the problem with Jalen is if he's not producing at a decent level offensively, even like, again, a middling level offensively, right? 15 to 20 points on decent efficiency. If he's not giving you that, there are better, more effective defensive options that you can put out there, like a Tari Eason or like an Amin Thompson or a Jae'Sean Tate or even an Aaron Holiday, guys who can give you more defensively, who can also give you some semblance of offense, just knocking down open shots or being effective in transition. And that's kind of the battle for Jalen Green, is he has to get to a place where he is at least a consistent offensive force, because he's not a better defender than that whole list of guys that I just named. He's not bigger, longer, stronger than the list of guys that I just named. So his way to stay on the floor is to be a consistent offensive force. He's made strides as a playmaker. He's made strides as a defender. Those things are not enough to keep him on the floor if his offense is going to be this bad on a game-by-game basis. So the consistency remains an issue for Jalen Green. And unfortunately now, after seeing him able to do it on the road against the Denver Nuggets, he's back to inconsistency, but now back at home, which is a whole different level of concerning. So not out on him yet, but something's got to happen, right? Something's got to give at some point. And you're starting to see now with the return of Amin Thompson, Jalen's minutes are going to start to dwindle. We've seen a few games now where he's been benched at the end of games, and unless he figures it out, Ime Udoka is going to continue to ride whoever the hot hand is, or he's going to go to whoever he thinks gives him the best chance to win these games at the end. And unless Jalen's producing offensively, he's not one of those guys, unfortunately. So with that, that's going to be final thoughts from this Rockets Spurs game, 93-82 win. Now 10 in a row for the Houston Rockets at home. They are, I believe one of like the top 3 teams in the association when playing at home now, which is really incredible sentence to be able to speak on this very podcast. But give me your thoughts from this game. Give me your thoughts on Amin Thompson's return to action, Tari Eason's flu game, all that good stuff. Let me know how you feel in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.